Okay, so
Dalziskin with Unspent transaction outputs for charitable giving.
sweet. So I'll quickly just kind of go over what my place is in this industry, and how long I've been here, and the kind of work that I do, the project I work on, what I'm passionate about. Just very quickly before I get into the more technical, untechnical stuff of how I think and most people in the community think charitable giving should be done. So I work primarily on a project called Metaverse. It's a permissionless blockchain project that's very similar to Bitcoin. We like to refer to it as Bitcoin plus plus, as in there are some more advanced capabilities that we have on the Metaverse blockchain, while still maintaining the unspent transaction output model. So when I say unspent transaction output model, just hold with me for a second, because a lot of you will have already been have done some research into Ethereum, which is the account-based model. That was it's completely different. I started learning with the account-based model, and I actually went back into the UTXO-based model because of some of the advantages that I'll get into in the seminar. But from like all the research I've done, and like everything I've seen in the space, because I really wanted to be part of a charitable effort that incorporated some of the the skills that like I've learned, and some of the development that I've worked on over these last couple of years as blockchains slowly become more adopted. The first one, or the one I was most passionate about, was actually this project, which I suspect came about in a roundabout way from a conversation I had with some Binance people a couple years ago, from a project I was doing at the time with a good friend of mine, Christine Duhame, about basically getting menstrual health products out to refugee women who were under. It was the more research I did about it, the more sadness I felt as to like the way the United Nations was dealing with it. And the saddest part of it all, and basically our stumbling block at that time, was that we couldn't get the products into the refugee camps because the United Nations would only allow it through their supply chain mechanisms. So here we have like Binance Charity. This is probably the most successful decentralized, not really that decentralized platform that we have that's out there right now. And I really like this model right here. So they have a one pink hair token, which is the equivalent, they say, of giving a year's worth of menstrual health supplies to a child. And basically anybody that's gonna be willing to supply that, they can go to the Binance exchange and they can redeem that for a specified amount. So let me show you very quickly if I can. Featured projects, and yeah, they get quite a bit of money through this platform. And this is also unspent it's also an unspent transaction output model. I'll get into exactly what that means and why that needs to be the case. And most of these blockchain projects that deal with identifying exactly where the money goes and what wallet it is, not losing any of the money in the process. However, like through smart contract token loss, or if there's a fork or a project doesn't do well with a version of an ERC20. So let's take a look at this. And they're actually able to, in a not completely decentralized way, share with us the donation records from all the people that are giving money, along with the transaction ID of that happening. Just for reference, if we click on that, that's going to take us to their Explorer, which is going to give us more information about that transaction. Usually I'll have the hash of that transaction, which is basically a unique identifier that, like, the highly unprobabilistic towards infinity will ever reoccur in the same order, whether it's pending or if it's successful at the time, the block height, the timestamp. This is very important in terms of showing people that this happened at this specific time. Also the transaction type. This is a transfer. They're able to identify that in the output field of the unspent transaction. And again, I'll get back to all of that stuff after framing all of this. And this is the fee, and the from, and the to. Cool. And interesting enough, they also have this. Really cool. They have the receiver name. This is the name of an individual child that has received this pink care token. What is the year's worth of supply of the menstrual health product? And this is another transaction ID of that happening. And again, if we look at that, usually when we click on one of these hashes, it'll take us to Explorer with the same kind of thing. Oops. So of course, this happened afterwards. This was a transfer, and this was another transfer to the child. The problem, I mean, this all looks really great. We have the green check marks, and the identities have been verified by our execution partners. But if we look at the model, the donor sends crypto to BCF, the Binance Charity Foundation. The Binance Charity Foundation now has control over that cryptocurrency, and they get to determine where they send it. In the model that we dream up as developers, we want to eliminate all those faulty processes, all those breakpoints where things can go wrong. What we would much prefer is, for example, the donor sends the money, the Binance charity were to relay, which is a big difference. Be able to basically redirect is a good way to say it, towards a custodian wallet instead of ever having it in their hands. And even better, if it were possible, which in certain situations it is, to relay it from the donor to the Binance Charity Foundation to the custodian wallet, all the way to the child that it belongs to and that we want to give it to, and we have to go through all these different channels to get it to. Some other quick platforms that I thought were really cool. This one right here is very similar to the what's it called, the blockchain Charity on Blocks one, where you have small active campaigns that users are posting. They do have some kind of federated way of approving it to get on this platform, but it doesn't have that kind of drive that Binance Charity has. But I'm optimistic. I think a lot of these platforms, which there are several of them, it's more of a waiting process for people to realize that this model fails, what they have right here, and this model succeeds, where you're basically eliminating every point where somebody can, what I like cleverly called unspent. You can like you're unspending all the problems in the chain. Let me see what else I have here. Okay, so let's go into a little bit about why an unspent transaction output model is more practical and better for this use case specifically. It's not better in all use cases. Ethereum is a very powerful platform where you write your smart contract logic. There's basically a virtual machine which you can think of as a computer with like its own computing environment, which is executing that logic on every block, and it's dictating what to do based on what comes in, what requests are being made to it. Not to overcomplicate things, because this is not my technical audience. I think one of the things I wanted to really show here, it's my Bitcoin one. Maybe I don't have it here. So Ethereum was never, as you can see over here. Let me try to bring this into better focus. Move this up here so not bothering everyone. It was never really meant as a currency. It was only in around like 2017, 2018 that you had a Turing complete virtual machine that was that people wanted to take advantage of, and there was all these people that were supporting it, that they really thought, okay, maybe this can also be a way to transfer currency. But really that's really not what it's meant for. It's in a better way, it can be thought of as a way to measure compute. So for example, this is this is not an actual smart contract, but this would be, if you were to write it out in English, this would be an example of a smart contract. And all these operations that are written out, they amount to the gas you're going to pay. Well, your users are going to pay to interact with that smart contract. And that's why you have so many developers trying to find ways to condense their smart contracts, because some of the gas fees in order to execute transactions are getting ridiculous, to the point where a lot of the smart contracts that are written are 1,000 lines deep and require you to pay 60 cents in gas just to execute a simple transaction that can be done even on Bitcoin for a fraction of the price. And Bitcoin is just, it's even that much more valuable. That's how crazy it's gone. And to get into, to back up a little bit, to get into what an unspent transaction output is, a very basic way of explaining it would be for me to say, I have $5 or $5 worth, or the amount of Bitcoin that's worth that $5. Okay, let's leave the $5 out of the equation. Let's say I have half a Bitcoin, and I am trying to purchase something. I have half a Bitcoin, and I have 0.5 Bitcoin, and then I'm trying to buy something that's 0.3 Bitcoin. You can think of it very basically as creating change. So when I submit the transaction, but in that case, I would have too much. In that case, let's say it's at 0. I'm trying to buy something that's 0.7 of a Bitcoin, and I have 0.5 of the Bitcoin. I need to receive my change, my 0.2 that that belongs to me. That is represented in the output field of the transaction. And that's something that is traceable and available for everybody to see, because the entirety of the Bitcoin blockchain, the sum of all of its ingredients amounts to like a non-zero. It can't be like all the units of account are held in check. It is the case in certain instances where certain Bitcoin is less valuable, mainly because it's been associated and used in different like fraudulent and like criminal activity. But just as a whole, like the entirety of the balance of Bitcoin can be assigned to all the wallets that exist, and that's the major thing that's really important in a charity, the ability to identify everything about it. The problem with Ethereum is it just like the amount of transactions you would have to do, the kind of smart contract, it would never be worth it. Not at this stage of the game. They're going to be able to, they say they're going to be able to do this in a couple years, you know, when they implement proof of stake. But as it stands right now, the kind of the amount that it would cost, and you know the difficulty in proving that the account balance is in fact what it is, can be an incredible challenge, especially when there are so many different kinds of ERC20s. And in that case, you're often going through some kind of intermediary that's going to be swapping them, which can be an incredible challenge to deal with. And you never want to be reliant on a third party to handle that kind of thing. So yeah, that's most of what I wanted to get into. Another important thing, which you know, it's a native. Well, it's actually not native to Bitcoin, but it can be included in, and several blockchains have done this, is registered digital identity on chain as an unspent transaction output. That can be a little bit confusing to think of to start with, but let's imagine for a second that in that same situation, I have what 0.7 Bitcoin. I'm trying to buy something that's 0.5 Bitcoin. I'm going to get that 0.2 Bitcoin as an unspent transaction output. But the interesting thing is, in that same transaction, we can add something to it, what we call a type extension, and that's where we can register a digital identity on chain. There are numerous examples of ways that this has been done. Unfortunately, there are other, apart from Bitcoin, most of the trend has gone the account balance way, but popular UTXO-based chains, like apart from Bitcoin, successful ones would be like Qtum, Digibyte, and then the one I work on, which is Metaverse. And then I see, you don't see my screen? What happened? Dismiss. Can you see my screen, everyone? Awesome. Yeah, it's not a very good PowerPoint, but thank you. So yeah, that, and I pretty much just I wanted to verify it, like is it like this was indeed the case. Like there are, like, Ethereum is just not used for a kind of like the supply chain, at least at the scope and scale that you need in order to track your donors all the way to the eventual outcome of where they get to. What else can I talk about in this? An important part in this model using a decentralized whatever resource networking and even community is being able to take advantage of the people that that are on the ground. You want to make them stakeholders in the process. The dream of it, of course, is to create what's called a decentralized autonomous organization where there are a set of rules and subjects and facts and all of that that basically determine what kind of impact you have on the overall development of the organization. You can think of it as everybody gets a seed to start, and based on the way they're motivated and they act, that's the way their seed is nurtured, and they should be active stakeholders in that process. I don't believe that the entire process of charitable giving, even if at this point the entire process can't be decentralized, I don't think it should be entirely federated. And what I mean by that is that the people that are running the organization should have the entire control of where the distribution of funds goes. That's always going to run into problems. There are a bunch of projects that took that shortcut. They sacrificed we have in blockchain we have the scalability trilemma, where we have scalability, decentralization, and security, and they've sacrificed decentralization and security in order to achieve scalability, which usually means that they've given the control over to a set amount of people, and they basically control what happens. And there've been as you know, that can be as most of you know, that can be a horror story to deal with, because things change over time, and people can, as in the case with EOS, they sold their stake for money, and it's just unsustainable the way in order to do that you have to create a sort of a crypto economic environment that involves both the people that are running the organization, the people that are at the ground, and the donors as well. All of these people need to have a say in what's happening as the organization evolves. That's the ideal of what we're trying to accomplish. And when I say we're trying to accomplish, I'm speaking of the developer community, the people, what I call my friends and my friends of friends. We're all of a generation that we used to torrent. We were upset that most of us were upset we didn't have enough money to pay for subscriptions, and we found clever little tricks and ways to get around for paying for things. And most of us played games, and we were upset with the way those games were moderated, so we created spin-offs of those games. All of this is a culture that has brought about this crazy revolution that we have here with blockchain. And we're still working on the infrastructure, but I'll tell you we're getting pretty close. Let me see if I think I highlighted most of what I wanted to. I think we should open it up to questions and like just like discuss. And if you had any specific things that you wanted to ask me, I I have way too much knowledge than I probably should. I care, yeah, I care about this more than is probably good for me.
Tal, would you like me to unmute
Yeah.
people? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Oh, well, I will unmute everybody. Just a
Mhm.
second. Hang on.
Is everybody unmuted now?
Yep.
Yes, everybody is unmuted.
Maybe we should start with, I think it's Laxmi and Nikki. Those are the two that, they're the ones doing the projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like maybe we can start with like if you had any questions on like how like as somebody who develops and obsessively in this space, like what I think is like on a technical level, what I would do or like how I would approach things.
Well, first of all, thank you. This is a very informative. Actually, I learned quite a bit, even though it was, not the full hour. But yes, you see, I agree with you when you said that developing an ecosystem, because for us right now, we have started to onboard the two projects for our MVP are one is farming, food security, and the other one is replacing temporary roofing for 30,000 homes. And one thing that we are having problem with is the distribution of, so we have our partners on the ground who are doing this. Like when I mean by partners on the ground we've spent almost a year creating partnerships with local charitable organizations on the ground who are executing it. The thing is, we believe that people kind of need to be paid for their work as opposed to working for free. And so the one thing I'd like to understand and learn more about is what is the best way for an MVP to demonstrate people getting paid and paying them, as opposed to Bitcoin, because a lot of these areas, one, electricity is a problem, power is a problem, and second of all, how could we distribute? Like, is it a Giveth plugin? Is it Bitcoin? In your professional opinion?
Well, thank you for my professional opinion. The unspent transaction model, like Bitcoin doesn't specify how much you're charging for a transaction. That can still be collected as a fee. Like it doesn't say you have to have this, you have to do this amount. Like if you need to be paying these people, then then the transactions for the Bitcoin blockchain will that's what it'll cost.
And the thing is, it's like we're looking at the compliance side and the regulation side. We found out that a lot of people don't own bank accounts, which is fine. But what would be a really easy way that we could demonstrate this and also show that money is going to the allocated people who have been vetted, by the way?
I really like the way that Binance Charity did it. This is a pretty good looking thing.
Okay.
I mean, it's not completely like it's not actually like legit. Like I've looked at like their code and like I'm trying to help there as well. But like this with the donation records and allocation records, I like this if it's done properly. Like this is great.
I like that as well. Yeah. And so one question I wanted to ask you, Tal, is, when it has the receiver names and you said they were going to these individual people, obviously these people not just been vetted, but they have their own individual wallets, and you're able to demonstrate that the money that is given to them, they're purchasing these products? I mean, these are some of the questions that we are experiencing right now.
Right. Like, could you go into a little bit more detail? I think I understand what you're getting at, but
so people are saying, oh yeah, you pay them and people will buy drugs, or, you know, they won't spend it being, you know, they might show up for the work site, they may not show up for the work site, things like this. So
I see. So that's where the thing about like just giving them Bitcoin isn't the option, isn't a good enough option there. In that case, like if it's like they're not, I don't like to our own for here at Metaverse, but that's like something that like we do here. There are a bunch of other chains that can also do something similar to, like, can do that. This is I never think of all of this as a competition. I think of more of it as a movement towards something, because this is comparatively speaking to where all this other compute in the world is going. The blockchain is small.
yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I have many more questions, but is it okay?
Yeah, you can. You're very welcome to. I'll answer as many as you like. You have to ask. Let's get about. Let's do that. Let's do that after. We'll keep in touch, and yeah, for sure. Let's get maybe
Hi, Cal. This is Lakshmi Badri here.
Hi.
So I'm working on a project for charity on Block. When we started with this concept, it was more for, I live in Canada, and we were trying to do for a small NGO in India. So I have challenges a lot, and how this whole transactions are going to work on, how are the tax receipts and regulations will be taken care. I have no idea. I'm lost over. So
in that case, that's what we have the Explorer for. I don't know, to be honest, I can't tell you what they. I can lead you to the person who tells us what they do with this information, but this is the information that's necessary.
So if I build a blockchain with all these fields with the developer, and then can this be used by the NGOs to issue a tax receipt for the donors, because most of them are looking for that type of.
That's not that's not a problem. That's even all of that can be done off chain, like by taking most of this data that's here. This is a very basic like Explore as an example. The Metaverse Explorer is like a lot more complex, and then the Bitcoin one is a lot more complex, where you have a lot of information in these fields that give you like statistics and the transactions and certificates and all that jazz. And then the Bitcoin Explorer, I think the most popular one is probably this one right here. It'll also give you a bunch of more information that you can basically you'll have everything you need to do the tax receipts.
Okay.
Transactions, average fee, yeah.
Okay, second question.
This is basically our tax receipt. So yeah, go on, sorry.
So second question I have is along how the money transfer will happen. Like, so if this is something new to me, so I'm just starting and I haven't done anything in this field. So if I go to a bank and say that, hey, I'm working on this project and I need an account where the funds can come for a project, for a charity project, and then when we have certain amount of money, we can transfer that money to the NGO, who will then transfer to the beneficiary, because we wanted to have an NGO accountable on on the returns on that particular beneficiary. So they are going to monitor
Right.
this beneficiary and audit that beneficiary. If they are
So, what I'd say is that they're like emerged two separate like economies. The unregulated economy of cryptocurrency and the regulated economy. I work primarily in the unregulated model. Like we're barely concerned with turning it into fiat. We're very comfortable having it holding our cryptocurrency for the most part, and paying people with it, and people using it in different ways. So I understand your question, but maybe I might not be the best person to. Lori she seems to have an answer to that in the chat.
Sorry, I missed the original question. I do know more about from the charity business side of things and how you can distribute it, but it really comes down to the entity of who's actually paying for it. You actually have to have, if you issue a tax receipt, you have to actually be a Canadian resident if that's what they're looking for, right?
Cool.
Okay, so I'll reach out to you.
Yeah, I dropped out of law school. I didn't like it, so that's sorry. That would have been useful for that question. Who else do we have in here? Does anybody else have any questions? Maybe we can unmute everyone and kind of have a chat.
This is my first participation in any of this. I've been kind of MIA for a month. I got involved in some stuff that I didn't expect to with respect to politics, unfortunately. So it took up all my free time. So I just joined the Telegram groups. I knew this would be the time to introduce myself. I mean, we met originally, some of us did, in September. But I've been just out of commission for a month, so this is I guess my official, introduction, and I'm very happy to have seen the presentation and see forward, like what we'll have going forward. I've looked at the Telegram groups. I haven't seen anything in there. I don't know how much is transacted over the last month that I haven't been active, but. Yeah, and I'm already asked to make a bunch of comments regarding my mentorship, which thus far is. So thank you very much, and this was very informative because I hadn't seen really any of the details regarding the business model and the interface. So I believe that these two projects work very well together and are synergistic because they solve a lot of the same problems.
Tal, I have a question for you. Chris, welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
My mentor, so we'll definitely reach out.
Yeah.
Tal, my question is, what do you suggest in order to convert crypto into fiat? I know that's not your area, like you mentioned before, but this is a possible problem.
Well, I think what's it called? The berry one, Coinberry. They seem to have managed that with the tax paying. Like they figured out people can pay property taxes with Bitcoin in Richmond Hill and Innisfil. So they seem to have figured something out like that. I think the arrangement is they lock in the price for an hour and then they have an arrangement with the bank. But I'd talk to them. Though they seem like they've been the only ones to accomplish that so far, as far as I know.
Do you is it coin as and berry as in Berry or berry like the city?
No, Coinberry.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I also know that Marina is not handling the charity piece of Coinberry anymore. There's a new representative. I'm in connection with them, but BitBuy is also assisting with charitable organizations in Canada, and I work with on that as well. But the question is not about how to convert, is more the real problem that we see in the industry right now is how do you determine when you actually pull the money out,
Right.
because we're entering a space where we're dealing with asset, and we're also dealing with the liquidity of the asset. And as the price fluctuates in
Right.
the market, um, for me, when I had cashed out for the Bitcoin for the initial donations for Ability Online, it was really about determining how long you're going to hold the
Right.
asset and when you actually cash out.
For
Now,
for me, I think, Lori, it's the end user. So, for example, they could buy bread or buy boots or pay for their mortgage or something that they could go. And I'm seeing like banks are having different price points, like they have different transaction
right,
fees. So yes, I mean, at the end of the day, people are asking me, the ones who are, these are people who, for example, the workforce, people who are building, they are asking me about, they just want to buy essentials. They don't really care about how we set up the wallet or anything like that. Just want to buy the essentials. And that's my biggest problem, is figuring out how to get people paid and so they get what they need so they just can get on with things.
That's fine. Yeah, no.
so
Yeah. So one of the new introductions into the the scene has many people have heard of stable coins.
Yeah,
A DAI, DAI would be a
yeah,
good example of them, which it's I just paid my Waterloo stake fee, but so like this is it doesn't drop below 0.99 or doesn't go over 1.01 relative to the US dollar.
I
So
see.
people take this as it's basically gold, and it's backed by different like staking pools and securities and that kind of things. But generally, this is the DAI. This is taken anywhere as gold.
Okay.
Well, $1 USD.
And what do you think of Coinbase? I'm just throwing it out there. I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean it's the regulated place. It's I use it because it's like super easy and
Yeah.
like I use it like a kind of a just because you can switch between Bitcoin and Ethereum very easily on there.
Mm-hmm.
Like and they haven't started begun charging me enough to kick me off. So, but like, it depends on how you want to use them. Like there are a lot of options, but like on the marketplace, like, and a lot of them that are just getting into it, that have solid products that want to get market share and are willing to offer like good deals just to get that market share.
Yeah, because my old mentor, you could say, Tim Draper, as you probably know, he holds a lot of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to see if we can have an intro with Coinbase, but Coinbase was, I think, hacked a month ago. And a lot of people are saying, oh, they're not very reliable, and because they're able to change crypto into fiat. But I think for my purpose, all intents and purposes, I thought I just need something really small that is able to demonstrate that the project can work, as opposed to, I don't know.
As in, okay, I mean, like if it's just small amounts of money,
Yeah.
I'd have to think about it and get back to you, because
Thank you.
like there are and all of this is regulated, so and it would have to be done in Canada. There's some
I just did that
they've killed us here on the regulated side.
yeah.
Almost as bad as the U.S. for that's why Viewfin, the company that I work for that has Metaverse, we also have a digital currency exchange, right, BTC, that is registered in Dubai of all places.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Oh, the U.S. Well, they're tightening up their laws. They're making it so challenging to function as a digital currency exchange. Like, what's it called? There are different places, like outside of the U.S. and Canada, but like the U.S. Just to get to Casey's question, if we look, for example, if we go to Google and we go for like the top 100 cryptocurrency exchanges, so place, yeah, it's pretty reliable index here, and basically none of them are in the United States, and none of them have the kind of trading volume. They kicked Binance out pretty much, but all of these are somewhere in East Asia, Russia, or somewhere else. Yeah. That's where the trading volume is. So it's been a challenge, and I can't. Yeah, maybe Kraken. That might be one, but yeah, as you can see, it's kind of. I'm not the best person, but I can mention it to somebody. The law does not interest me too much anymore, but yeah, as you can see, they none like United States is like they're just, all of these are just like weird names that are like East Asian stuff. Not weird names, but they're East Asian stuff. Like, who would have thought Fat BTC was the top ranking, would be the top ranking trading volume exchange today? Let's see what we got here. Manage participants. Who hasn't had a chance to speak, or is everybody else? Yeah. I think everybody's kind of made a point. Does anybody have any other questions? Like, I'm obviously like free to ask after the session, like today, and I'll do what I can. But just before, maybe we wrap things up, if there's like any other like questions that come to mind.
Cal, can you please a little bit explain us about your future sessions that you're going to do? You have some sort of plan to tell us about all other projects and the technologies that is supposed to be used there. Can you please tell us a little bit about that?
Sorry, sir, I missed that. Could you repeat what you said?
Oh, yes. Yeah, sorry, I probably was breaking out. Can you please tell us a little bit about your future sessions that you're going to do?
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of break them up into, like, this one was like UTXO versus the account model. This is like the very clear use case for the UTXO, like similar to Bitcoin. I forget how I broke them up the other way. You can check very quickly with the message to Elena, but there's going to be two more. That one of them is going to be like Ethereum based, and another one is going to deal maybe specifically with permission blockchains, but not the ones that you're probably most familiar with, ones that give you an option to transition from, like a federated, like group of people that are running it to a decentralized, completely open environment. That's far more preferable, like giving yourself an option, that kind of option, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Anybody, if you have any questions, please let us know. If not, so this session is going to be recorded, and you're going to you can watch it again, and you can join us for our next one, which is going to be happening in a week or so, and we're going to be announcing it very soon. If you don't have any questions, thank you very much. And yes, so Nikki is asking Cal's email address. So I'm going to post it in the Telegram group. Yes, it's italziskin19@gmail.com. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cal. Thank you very much, everybody.
No problem.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.